I was deep into a meeting with some clients when the lobby doors flew open so hard they rattled on their hinges. Heads turned to see who had stormed in. It was Karen Miller, the president of our neighborhood HOA, striding across the polished marble in stilettos, her face red with triumphant malice. She jabbed a manicured finger at me while my clients stared, bewildered. "You're fired." "Effective immediately," Karen bellowed, her voice echoing through the vast lobby. "Pack up and get out of my building within the hour." A flush crept up my neck as every eye in the place swung my way. My clients exchanged awkward looks, shifting in their seats. But I kept my expression composed. Karen stood there, arms folded, a self-satisfied grin curving her lips as she savored the public spectacle. But there was one thing she didn't know, something that made me lift my chin and meet her stare without blinking. I gave a cool nod. "I think you're mistaken, Karen." Her eyebrows shot skyward at my calm reply. "The only mistake is thinking you'd still be working here after your pathetic performance," she hissed. "Now get out before I call security." 6 weeks ago, I'd still been working here as an ordinary financial advisor. It wasn't a flashy job, but I loved helping clients plan their finances and futures. Karen, however, made every day a trial. She wasn't just HOA president in our neighborhood, she also managed this office building, giving her double the authority and endless ways to exert her obsession with control. She micromanaged everything, from the break room thermostat to which parking spots employees could use. Anyone who pushed back was slapped with write-ups for insubordination, or found themselves suddenly hit with surprise HOA violation notices at home. I'd watched good colleagues quit rather than deal with her bullying. But my circumstances had shifted in a way no one here knew about. 2 months earlier, my uncle passed away, leaving me a significant inheritance. I decided to invest it in real estate. When I learned this very building was for sale, it felt like fate. I quietly formed a holding company to keep my identity under wraps and submitted an offer, which the sellers accepted quickly. The final closing was scheduled for the following week. Meanwhile, I kept coming to work as usual, saying nothing about the purchase. Karen, meanwhile, grew even more tyrannical. She started bombarding staff with daily emails about professional conduct and had new security cameras installed aimed straight at employees' desks. At the latest HOA meeting, she rammed through absurd new rules about holiday decorations and lawn schedules, hitting homeowners with steep fines for things as minor as leaving a trash bin out too long. When my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, a 70-year-old widow, ended up in tears over a $500 fine for planting the wrong flowers, I knew I couldn't stand by anymore. Last week, Karen had cornered me in the break room, seething because I'd walked clients through the building's main entrance instead of the side door. "This is not some bargain basement operation," she hissed, jabbing her finger at my chest. "Maybe if you learned to act professionally, you wouldn't be stuck in that tiny office forever." I'd merely nodded and apologized, which only seemed to infuriate her further. What she didn't realize was that just hours earlier, I'd signed the final documents. The building officially belonged to me. So now, with Karen glaring at me and ordering me out, I could feel the weight of the building's deed inside my briefcase. I calmly gathered my clients' folders and stood up. "I'm so sorry about the interruption," I murmured to them. "Let's reschedule for tomorrow morning." Once my clients had left, Karen stalked closer, dropping her voice into a venomous whisper. "I've waited months for this. You're a nobody with no drive. People like you exist to get stepped on by people like me." I kept my voice even. "You might be surprised, Karen." I headed for the exit, pulled out my phone, and made sure she could hear me. "Hi, James?" "Yes, the transfer is finalized. The building's mine as of 9 this morning. Can you draft the new management notices for tomorrow? Thanks." I glanced over my shoulder and caught the frozen look on Karen's face as she processed what I'd just said. Without another word, I walked out. The following morning, I arrived early with the property management team. We posted fresh notices everywhere. Effective immediately, Smith Properties is the new owner of Oakwood Professional Center. All management inquiries should be directed to the new property manager, David Williams. At precisely 9 a.m., I watched the security feeds as Karen approached the front doors and swiped her access card. The light stayed red. The doors refused to open. She swiped again. Still nothing. She started pounding on the glass. A security guard stepped up and pointed to the newly posted notice. I watched Karen's face twist with fury as she read it. She finally stormed inside when David let her in to explain. She headed straight for her office, only to find the locks had been changed. By then, a group of employees had gathered in the lobby, watching the spectacle with a mix of shock and thinly veiled excitement. "Where is he?" Karen demanded, whirling on the crowd. "Where is that nobody who thinks he can mess with me?" I stepped forward from beside the elevator. "Good morning, Karen." I think David was explaining the change in ownership. She let out a sharp laugh that broke off halfway, sounding almost strangled. "This is a sick joke. You can't afford this building." I gave her a polite smile. "Actually, Smith Properties is my holding company. I bought the building last week. The transfer became official yesterday morning, about an hour before you tried to fire me." Karen's face went pale as she stared at me. "That's impossible. You're just a financial advisor. You drive a 10-year-old Honda." "I believe in living beneath my means," I said quietly. "But that's beside the point. As the new owner, I've hired a management firm to run building operations. Your role has been eliminated, effective immediately." Her stunned silence gave way to blazing rage. "You can't do this. I've managed this building for 7 years. I'll sue you for wrongful termination." "You're free to talk to my attorneys," I replied, handing her a business card. "But I have ample documentation of your management practices, including employee statements about harassment and intimidation. Now I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. Your personal items will be packed and delivered to your home." Karen's composure finally snapped. She let out a shriek, grabbed a potted plant from reception, and hurled it across the lobby. It narrowly missed an elderly client who just arrived. Then she spun toward the reception desk and shoved the computer monitor off the counter. The crash echoed through the room as it smashed onto the floor. "This is my building," she screamed, scattering chairs as she lunged forward. "Mine. You're all fired. Every last one of you." David called security as I tried to defuse the situation. "Karen, please. You're only making this worse for yourself." She rounded on me, eyes blazing. "You think you've won? I'm still HOA President. I'll ruin your life. I'll dig up every violation on your property and fine you into bankruptcy." Security rushed in to escort her out, but she slapped one of the guards across the face. At that point, David had no choice but to call the police. Minutes later, 2 officers arrived and tried to talk her down. But Karen had barricaded herself behind the reception desk, shrieking threats at anyone who got close. When the officers finally approached, Karen attempted to shove past them, screaming that she'd destroy me. The officers had no choice but to restrain her. Despite kicking and yelling, they handcuffed her and told her she was under arrest for disorderly conduct, assault, destruction of property, and trespassing. As she was led away, Karen continued hurling threats and curses. The lobby fell silent once the doors closed behind them, her furious cries echoing in the quiet. A week later, Karen was in court facing 3 misdemeanor charges. The judge, clearly unimpressed with her protests that she was the real victim, sentenced her to 100 hours of community service, ordered her to pay $7,000 in damages, and issued a restraining order barring her from coming within 100 feet of the building or contacting any staff. But the final blow came from the HOA itself. They convened an emergency meeting. With video of Karen's arrest making the rounds among residents, the board voted unanimously to strip her of her presidency. When they delivered the news, Karen slumped into her chair, opening and closing her mouth like a fish, utterly speechless. For the first time since I'd known her,